Oh my goodness, where do I start? So hi everybody and welcome back to Inside number 23, my channel which is all about knitting and sewing and generally living the craftiest life possible. In case you're not aware, I have been on a major hiatus. I have been MIA for a very long time, so this feels a little bit peculiar, and for anyone who's watched my previous episode, it actually started in a similar way. I was away for a little bit and then I thought I was going to be back and things didn't kind of work out as I would have liked them to, and now we're in a similar situation again. I mean an inordinate amount of time later, but hooray! I am back with you. I am so excited to have a little catch up and a little chat about what I've been working on, and yeah, let's just jump straight in, and I'm very excited. I'm coming to you as always from Hertfordshire, which is just north of London in the UK. I have just had an ice cream, so I am full of sugary goodness, and I have a lovely big cup of water because it is very warm here in the UK at the moment. We've been having high 20s, 30-degree heat, and we don't have air conditioning or any kind of real ability to deal with heat in the UK, so it's been a little bit unbearable, but hopefully by staying hydrated I will be able to get through the episode for you guys. For those of you who are interested, you can follow me on social media. I'm pretty much everywhere as Miss Lavelli, although I'm most active on Instagram. And we also have a Ravelry group for the podcast. More on all of that kind of social media side of things in just a little bit. So yeah, it's a little bit strange to be back with you all. It's strange because it feels very familiar but very odd at the same time, so apologies if this turns into a little bit of a babbling all over the place kind of episode for you. But I wanted to start off by saying thank you to everybody who has expressed concern about me being away from the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail as to why I was away. It's not something that I am ready to talk publicly about. I may do in the future, but thank you for everybody for respecting the fact that it's not something that I've been talking a huge amount about on any form of social media, and for respecting that and giving me the time to kind of deal with things in my own way. But just so that you are all happy and assured, I want to say I am fine. I am so well looked after by my friends, by my family, by my workmates, and also by medical professionals. So please do not feel that you need to worry about me in any way at all, because I am absolutely fine, and we are dealing with things, and as you can probably tell, I'm feeling considerably better than I have in some time. I'm feeling much more myself. But one of the main reasons that I wasn't podcasting was during this time over the past several months, I have had absolutely no inclination to do anything in the kind of creative field whatsoever. It's been very bizarre. I haven't really done anything, so I didn't really have any material to share with you, hence no podcast, because I can't really sit here and talk about nothing if I haven't been knitting, if I haven't been sewing, if I haven't been doing anything. But in the last several weeks I have really seen a kind of improvement in my personal temperament and therefore in my ability to make lovely things, and it's been amazing. So I'm very happy to be able to share some lovely projects with you this week. I mean, I put makeup on for you guys. This is the most put together I have looked in some time. I mean, this is pretty good. I'm feeling confident, so yay! A couple of little bits and pieces before we crack on with creative content. You can find all of the show notes for the podcast just down below. So if there's a particular section that you want to skip to, I do timestamp pretty much everything. So feel free to flick through if you're not interested in just a general bit of administrative stuff at the beginning. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about before we get started. First of all is my social media presence. Whilst I was away, it was brought to my attention that there were quite a few people who obviously were very concerned as to what was going on with me and were genuinely worried, and for that I apologise. I'm sorry if I caused you any kind of concern. That was not my intention, but sometimes I think it's important to realise that when people are going through things in their life, updating their social media is not necessarily a number one priority for them. So that was one of the reasons why I wasn't sharing a huge amount. I wasn't really active online at all for quite a long period of time, and although I know that that is concerning, please be aware that I do have an amazing group of people around me to take care of me. On that point, I think that there were some people who were a little upset that although I started to share things again on my social media platform of preference, which is Instagram, I wasn't posting regular updates on Ravelry. So I thought this was a good time to just discuss Ravelry in general again, because it's not something that I have touched on in a little bit of time. And when it comes to Ravelry, I think it's a wonderful social media platform for a lot of people, but personally it doesn't gel with me. I have said that before on the podcast, although I don't expect you to have listened and watched every single episode, hence the kind of the slight retelling of my preferences with Ravelry, I guess. I love it for patterns. I use it for the podcast group for Inside Number 23 because I currently don't have another place to put that, although I am looking into other things in terms of having a different place for a group for the podcast in the future. Nothing's happening in the very near future though, so don't get super excited. But I do not use Ravelry really as a form of social media at all. I don't post lots of updates, I don't get involved in forums. I'm not very active on it in any way, whilst I am on Instagram because it just feels better for me. But I understand that it's difficult for people who don't necessarily use Instagram or want the app on their phone or can't have the app on their phone. What I would say to anybody who has kind of concerns about that is that my attitude to Ravelry is probably not going to change in the near future, so that's not necessarily going to be the best place to look for when it comes to regular updates from me. If you don't want to join Instagram and you don't want to be a part of that, that's absolutely fine. I completely understand that, but you can actually check on my Instagram profile without joining Instagram by using your computer and just going on instagram.com/Miss Lavelli, and that will show you my profile with all of my photos and bits and pieces and all of the captions that are linked to those photos if you're at all concerned as to what's going on with me, because that is where I kind of upload things semi-regularly, and you don't have to join it to do that. It's something that you can do if you have access to any form of browser, so on your computer like I said, or on a tablet or on a phone, which I presume that you have access to if you can watch this podcast on YouTube. So yeah, there's just that. And I just wanted to touch base with that and just say that that is my kind of social media platform of preference, as I've said. So that's the best place to look if you do want updates as to what's going on with me. And again, apologies if anyone was overly concerned, but I really hope that you understand that it wasn't intentional to kind of leave you in the dark, and that sometimes things in life overtake what happens online and social media. So yeah. One more thing before we crack on with crafty goodness is a little update regarding a knit along that has kind of fallen by the wayside, unfortunately, so I'm sorry about that, which was the Wong Along, which is a knit along that was for the incredible patterns of the incredible Michelle Wong, who is one of my favourite designers of all time. This knit along was supposed to run from February through April, and that time basically fell directly in the hiatus when I wasn't podcasting at all and wasn't sharing anything. And I'm sorry about that, because I know that some people were disappointed that that didn't have an active role in what I was doing. I mean, I was not in a place to be working on a Michelle Wong pattern. I'm going to lay it out there. I have not done a single stitch on my row cardigan since you last saw it on the podcast, which makes me very sad, but it was for good reason. I just couldn't bring myself to work on something that complicated, even though it is an absolutely stunning pattern. So the knit along kind of finished, but nothing really happened, and I've been thinking about what to do about the wrong along, and I basically thought, why don't I open it up to you guys? How would you like us to proceed? For those of you who were getting involved in that knit along, is it something that you want to continue? Would you prefer that we leave it open for several more months, kind of leave it open indefinitely so that you can get your projects finished if you haven't? Or if you would prefer to have it finished, would you like me to open a finished object thread so that you can share your finished garments on Ravelry, and I can draw prize winners from both there and the chatter thread? If you can comment down below, anyone who was being involved in that knit along, and just let me know what you would like me to do to proceed. I'll have a little look through those comments, and hopefully by the next time that I podcast I will have a more definite solution for you as to what's happening with that. So yay, trying to be organised. Oh, it's warm already. Water, water, hydration all day, every day. Okay, I think it's about time that I talk about a little bit of knitting, don't you? Because it's been a very long time since I've shared what I've been working on this podcast, and very excitingly, I am actually wearing a finished object this week. Hooray! And this is a finished object that you guys will have never seen on the podcast, which is really quite funny, because I started this and finished it in my time away. And I suppose I should start by kind of talking about where I am with my knitting mojo at the moment. Like I said, for a very long time, for several months in fact, maybe about 3 months or so, I was not doing anything creative in any way. I was incredibly tired and just not in the right place physically, mentally, emotionally, to invest a lot of my my time in being creative. I genuinely just didn't have the headspace for it. And when I started coming out of that feeling and feeling more myself, I realised that a lot of the projects that I currently had on my needles were very complex projects, or projects that weren't kind of sparking my imagination. And although I really wanted to get a lot of things off the needles, I thought, I'm going to cast on something new that excites me, that is with yarn that I love, that's a pattern that I've wanted to knit for a long time, that puts that joy in my heart just thinking about it. And who cares about all of the rest in terms of, oh, but this project might need to be finished, and oh, but you're supposed to be working on this. And I felt like the best thing from a kind of place of self-care for myself was, self-care, was to start a project fresh and new, like I said, that I knew would make me incredibly happy. And that project happened to be the Tegna, which is a pattern by Caitlyn Hunter. And I've wanted to cast on this project for ages, because it seems like everybody and their uncle has cast on this project, and every time I see one completed on Instagram, it's just always looks beautiful, and everyone always raves about what incredible pattern designer Caitlyn Hunter is. And this is my first pattern actually by Caitlyn that I've ever done, and I am completely and utterly in love with her, I'm not gonna lie. But also this yarn is something that I've wanted to cast on for a very long time. I actually have the ball band. This is a Twisted Fintch yarn. There it is. And it is the Finch 4-ply, which is a basically 75-25 superwash merino nylon blend, and I believe it's Hiuchi, the colourway, which is this incredible green. I will put the name on the screen to save you from my terrible pronunciation, but it's this amazing green colour, which I am so in love with. I think it is one of the most beautiful yarns that I've ever had the pleasure of knitting with. I did alternate skeins, which has created this slight kind of stripy effect, but it is a semi-solid green, this gorgeous emerald colour. And obviously along the bottom you have this lace detail, which is just divine. I cannot tell you how incredible it was to knit this. So when I first started knitting this project, you start from the bottom. It's a bottom up project, and it's fluff everywhere, and I was obviously working on the lace, and I must admit I struggled a little bit to get into the rhythm of the lace, not for anything to do with the pattern, because the pattern is a joy, but because it had been a very long time since I'd really used my brain at all, let alone for something intricate like this lace. But I really have to say I found knitting it so mentally healing and so satisfying to see it grow that I look at this project, and I've worn this top so many times since I have finished it. I actually feel quite emotionally attached to it, because I feel that this is like a recovery project for me. It really helped pull me out of the place where I was, and it grew very, very quickly, because obviously it's relatively simple in construction, and I just loved it. I cannot rave more about this project, and I definitely want to cast on another. I'm thinking maybe something with a bit of a speckle this time, to contrast with this beautiful semi-solid that I used for this. This yarn makes me happy because it's been in the stash for a little while. I actually purchased this last summer after meeting lovely Nathan of the Twisted Fintch at Pomfest last summer in London, and I bought a skein of his DK weight yarn in this exact same colour, and after petting it and stroking it and loving it, I knew that I needed to get a full kind of sweater quantity of yarn, so I did that. And I just love it. It makes me feel glamorous. It's super easy to wear. It's lovely to wear in kind of the heat that we've been having, because it's so free and non-fitted and quite boxy. It's also relatively cropped, which is not really a style that I've always liked, but recently I seem to be a little bit obsessive about cropped tops, be they sweaters or sewing projects that I've been dreaming up. So in every possible way, this project makes me very, very happy. I made one alteration to this pattern. I believe my gauge was exactly as the pattern was, so I used the needles specified in the pattern. The only thing that I did slightly differently is I think I knitted an extra 10 rounds on the sleeves, which I'm glad I did, because they finish just before my kind of elbow crease, which is exactly where I would want them to be. So I'm glad that I extended those just a touch. And I do think that if I were to knit this project again, I would probably not knit the body as long as it currently is, because it's not as cropped as I would like it to be. And although I stuck to the specifications of the pattern, I think it did drop out considerably during blocking, even though I did a very, very gentle block on it just to pretty much make the lace all pretty. And yeah, I think after wearing it quite a few times, it's already dropped quite a lot. So it sits, I would say, nearer to my hip than kind of between my waist and my hip, which is ideally where I would like it to be. But other than that, I am obsessed with it. I love it. The colour makes me happy. This green is everything. I want all of the things in this particular kind of green from now onwards. And yeah, I just love it. I cannot recommend it more highly. And if you are at all on the fence about knitting yourself a Tegna, I say do it now. Cast it on today and you will not regret it. So my next project to share with you is quite an interesting one for me, because it's been a very, very long time since I have shared a project of this kind on the podcast. The inspiration for this project came out of another small activity that I started to do when I was feeling a little bit better. One thing that I've really, really tried to focus on in the past several weeks is kind of more of a tidy house, tidy mind mentality, whether that be in general cleaning and tidying and organising, but also getting all of those little jobs done that I've been meaning to get done for a very, very long time and have never got round to it. One of those things that I've also been focusing on is knitting from stash, which is why my Tegna was such a joy, because I wasn't kind of buying more yarn in order to do it, and I knew that this was a project that I'd wanted to do for a very long time, so that was lovely. But one of the jobs that I've been putting off for the longest time is reorganizing my hand knit sock drawer, because I stopped wearing hand knit socks when the weather changed. I'd say kind of early this year, I think maybe February time, and I had this big bag filled with hand knit socks that still needed to be washed and put away, and I just haven't got around to doing it. So I finally did that, and I am so happy with how they all look, all tucked up, ready for when the weather changes back to being a little bit cooler. But as often happens when you spend a lot of time with some pretty projects, you cannot help but feel that you need more of that particular project in your life. So unsurprisingly, after putting away all of my lovely socks that are all clean and smell amazing, and they're tucked away with little lavender sachets to keep them fresh and safe, I decided that I wanted to cast on some socks. In particular, because this project really was my commuter knitting. The knitting that I was taking on the train and maybe doing a little bit at work on lunch times, because the majority of the body is just stockinette stitch. It was really, really great for commuting. And once I finished this, I didn't have anything to kind of fill that void. So I decided to cast on a sock, but I was a little bit cheeky, and I did make a purchase. I know I'm raving about knitting from stash and how amazing that is, but I realised that I don't actually have a huge amount of self-striping yarns. I have some, but they're very, very special, and I want to use those for kind of special times of the year and special occasions, that type of thing. So I felt like it was a good time to buy some new self-striping yarn, and I was recommended to go to Fab Funky Fibres, who are a UK-based yarn dyer, and I cannot tell you how amazing this yarn is. So thank you to everybody who suggested Fab Funky Fibres when I kind of asked on Instagram what your favourite self-striping yarns were. They had just done an update when I kind of requested that, and this colourway, oh my goodness, just look at that rainbow, isn't it incredible? Now this is called, I think it's Vikees Rainbow. It's either Vikees or Vikees. Again, I will put the name on the display down below, but it is beautiful. It's a self-striping sock yarn. It came with 2 of these skeins, so individuals for socks. So again, the 75-25 merino nylon blend. And I have already finished the first sock. Look at this! Isn't this fun? It's been such a long time since I've knit a sock, as you all know if you were a long-time viewer of the podcast, and look at how much joy this brings. It's amazing. I'm so happy that I decided to kind of cast this on, because it really does make me very, very happy. As you can see, it is an incredible repeat of colours. So I knit these cuff down. I knit them on 2.25 higher sharps needles, which I love higher sharps. They're probably my favourite needle of all time. I did a 1x1 twisted rib, and then I knit for the entire colour repeat down the leg of the sock. Try and find my words, down the leg of the sock. It's a little bit longer, I think, than I would usually knit a sock, but that is how long the colour repeat was, from this kind of pale pink band here all the way to this more violet one here, and that is just outstanding, that rainbow. Isn't that just beautiful? I managed to get just shy of a colour repeat on the foot as well. I think I'm missing maybe 3 colours of the colour repeat, but it still goes all the way through to the purple, so I'm very, very happy with that. Usually with self-striping socks, people go for a fish lips kiss heel. I personally don't really like the fish lips kiss heel. I like how it looks when you're knitting self-striping. I don't like how it feels when you wear it. So I did a heel flap and gusset, and I did an eye of partridge heel, which I think looks lovely. I did it in this contrast white, which I believe is now I can't remember, I think it might be opal yarn. It's just a fingering weight white that I had in the stash, and I did a matching toe. I did a round toe and then I kitchened it, and jobs are good. I have not yet cast on the second sock because I wanted to be able to share this beautifulness in the skein for you, because I did wrap up my yarn in a little ball, wound it by hand, because my ball winder has been having some issues, unfortunately, and kind of chewing up yarn and doing strange things with yarn cakes. So I will probably get this wound by hand today, and then get my second sock cast on and have a lovely pair of finished socks that I can tuck away in my lovely sock drawer, ready for when the weather turns again. I'm not sure whether or not I will be knitting loads more socks in the near future. I would say that my heart is again pulling me back towards garments, but this was a real treat, and again a nice project to bring me back into crafting, because what's more simple really than just going round and round and round and round on a sock. So yeah, Fab Funky Fibres. I'm really happy with this lovely hoe that I have, and yeah, I'm feeling the love for this project for sure. My final knitting project to share with you this week has again been a long time coming. I've had this yarn in my possession since PomFest last year. Everything seems to be linked around PomFest for some reason. Maybe I'm missing it. But PomFest, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, was an event that the magazine Pom Pom Quarterly hosted last summer for their birthday celebrations. It was their 5th anniversary of publishing Pom Pom Quarterly, of which I am a very, very big fan. I love Pom Pom Quarterly, and they had this amazing event with amazing vendors, and I was lucky enough to pick up some lovely treats while I was there. But this project is actually from the 5th anniversary edition of Pom Pom Quarterly, because I just love this. I think of all of the copies of Pom Pom that I have, this is just everything. I love this edition of this magazine. There are so many patterns in here that I want to knit, but in particular, the one that I've been planning to knit for the longest time is the Soirée sweater by Emily Foden. And this was knit when this magazine came out. One of my best friends, Amy of Stranded Dyeworks and the Stranded podcast, knit her own version of the Soirée sweater, and I loved it. She had her sample at PomFest and I tried it on, and it's cropped and it's oversized and it's gorgeous, and I fell in love with it. And of course I decided that the only way that I would be happy is if I were to knit my own version of Soirée out of the exact same colourway that Amy had used for hers, because I'm nothing if not inspired by my incredibly talented friends. So while I was feeling a little bit bleh still, I decided to swatch for it. This is my little swatch, which I'm kind of in love with. I'm very, very naughty, and although I do swatch for pretty much every garment that I knit, because I think that swatching is very, very important. If you're going to spend a lot of time working on a project, you want to make sure that it will fit. I very rarely swatch for projects in the round, which is a little bit naughty if you are going to be knitting a project in the round, because your tension is obviously different when you're knitting in comparison to when you're purling. But with this, I decided to be a good person and I knit my swatch in the round, and here she is. Isn't she gorgeous? This colourway is Shiner, which is one of Amy's gorgeous colourways from Stranded Dyeworks, and it is knit with her Paradise MCN fingering and her Drift base, which is a mohair silk lace weight, lovely fluffy gorgeousness. So you get this really fuzzy feeling. Like, that's probably not showing up on the camera, but it is very, very fluffy. And I did have to swatch a couple of times, but I eventually managed to get a gauge, and now I have this little fluffy cuff, which is very exciting. And I cast on, now there's mohair everywhere as well, mohair fluff all over the place, but I cast this on for real once I had finished my Tegna. I'm finding being more monogamous has been very, very satisfying for me. It's actually helped me focus and get more knitting done, because I am already quite substantially into this project. So let me just try and organise it, because I currently have stitches all over the place on one large circular needle, so I don't want to pull any of these stitches off by accident. But I have got to the point now where, after knitting the body, I have separated and finished knitting the back, and I'm now going to be rejoining and starting the front. So let me kind of show you the front. I think that will be the easiest part to show. It's quite a lot of knitting, you guys, as you can see. It is cropped and it is curling, so there's even more knitting kind of inside this little twist at the bottom here. But this is how much I've done. And isn't this colourway just divine? That's pretty true to life. Shiner is kind of, it's like this lilac purpley grey. It is very bruise-like, which is I think where the name inspiration comes from. Correct me if I'm wrong, Amy. But I love it. And knitting with the Paradise Base, the MCN Merino Cashmere Nylon blend together with the mohair silk is so luxurious. This is the detailing under the arm, and that just makes me so happy. It's a little bit of texture, a little bit of cable, but nothing too demanding. So I have been very, very much enjoying working on this. Although obviously I am in that strange place where it is really summer outside and I'm knitting on a mohair sweater, which isn't ideal, but funnily enough, I actually find this a really lovely project to work on in the evenings, sitting in my living room with the doors open, with a bit of breeze coming in when it's cooled down just a little bit, particularly with these long days that we're having. I do find it very disorienting when it's still light outside at nearly 10 o'clock. But one of the benefits of it being light for that long is that you can knit for a lot longer without feeling too sleepy. But I have been loving working on this, and I'm hoping that if I continue to be monogamous, it will be off the needles soon, and that will be another completed project for me. Although I probably won't be able to wear it anytime soon, because my goodness, that would be hot to wear. But yes, I'm loving this pattern. Emily Foden is an incredible designer, and this just makes me happy, and this colour is great. I think it grows really nicely with red lipstick, as you can see, and I think I'm going to be able to pair it with lots of things once the weather cools down a little bit. So yeah, that is the other project that I'm currently working on, and it's growing a lot. I think that that's probably due to the size of needles that I'm knitting it on. I believe it's 4.5mm that I'm working on at the moment. Again, higher sharps, my favourite needles. I do think that when you're knitting with 2 strands of yarn, metal needles aren't ideal. I think I would have probably done better to use wooden needles for a bit more grip, because the fibres in this yarn are very slippy, and they tend to go all over the place. And also sometimes I won't pick up both the mohair and the MCN yarn at the same time, so I do have to concentrate a little bit sometimes. But all in all, it is a fabulous project. I love it so much. And I'm going to put it down now because it's making me quite warm under these studio lights, and also there's mohair everywhere, so if I get a sneezing fit, that won't be great, but fingers crossed that won't happen. So moving on from knitting, I have been putting a few dents into some other lovely projects that I've been meaning to get done for a very long time. In case you hadn't noticed, I suppose the general theme of the episode is just getting things done because I've been doing that around the house, doing lots of little jobs, organising things. I'm in the process of organising all of my sewing patterns, my knitting patterns, my fabric stash, my yarn stash, because it's just giving me a really positive feeling in my mind, you know, just kind of cleaning up the old headspace as well as the physical space, which is fabulous. But one of the things that I've been wanting to do is to kind of work my way through lots of works in progress and get things finished, whether it be sewing projects, knitting projects, or all of the other miscellaneous crafts that I have kind of acquired over the years. And you may or may not remember that in summer of last year, I purchased some really lovely cross-stitch patterns from little plastic covers. And I actually finished one of them, I think it was August last year, which says "Office, Sweet Office," currently hanging on the wall of my study. I love it, it's beautiful. But I had also started another cross stitch project once that one had finished, and I haven't touched it for, I mean, at least 6 months, probably longer, and it was lurking at the back of one of my storage bits and pieces in the study. And I remembered it the other day and I thought, it's so nearly finished, I just need to get it out and get it done. And I'm happy to say it's finished! So this is the cross stitch. It's not currently in its proper hoop. I display these on the wall just in the embroidery hoop that I embroidered them into because I like the way that they look, and they're relatively inexpensive, the embroidery hoops that you can just buy from John Lewis or whatever. But to kind of give you an idea of how much of this I had done, I had already done all the flowers along the bottom, the Feminist, and then I had done about a third of the flowers on the top. So I literally just needed to finish these flowers along here. And I spent a really lovely morning when everybody else, it seems, in the UK was watching the World Cup football, which I have no interest in. If you like it, that's fine, but it's not for me. It was lovely and peaceful, and I felt like I was in a lovely crafty bubble, and I got this done, and I was so happy. It's, like I said, I've taken the main hoop off it because I'm actually painting that white so I can then display it on my wall so it'll look nice. But yes, this is one of many amazing patterns by Plastic Little Covers. Let me just do a little close-up for you so you can see all of those flowers. I didn't go by the exact colours that I used on the pattern for this that are specified in the pattern that you can buy, because I was using a lot of scrap embroidery floss that I had. But yeah, I really love it. I think it looks gorgeous, and I'm so happy to finally have it finished so that I can display it on my office wall with my other cross stitch and posters and such. So yeah, a quick little project. Took maybe 3 hours to finish it, but it just feels great. It just feels great to have that done, so that I don't have to have it hanging over me anymore. The last thing that I'm going to be talking to you today about is a little bit of sewing. This will be the last thing that I'm talking about. As you can probably tell, I'm getting a little bit tired. It's been a long time since I've podcasted, so let's not push things. But I have done a little bit, a very little bit of sewing this week, which is also incredibly exciting because this is a project that I have wanted to work on for a very long time, and I just didn't, for whatever reason, even before I was kind of took my time away from crafting, it just wasn't getting done. This is the Ebony either dress or t-shirt pattern by Closet Case Patterns, and I finally have one of these finished, and it's just the best feeling. I actually bought this fabric. You may remember it as a long-time viewer of the podcast if you have been watching for a while. I bought this at the Handmade Fair last year, and I love it. I believe it's from a website called Maud's Fabric Finds, although this fabric is not currently available on her website, so I'm sorry about that if you were a big fan of the acorns. It does make me feel a bit like a little squirrel when I wear it, but I kind of like that. And the option that I went for, there are 3 different versions of this top slash dress that you can make. The full dress version, the cropped top version, and the more tunic version with raglan sleeves. And I went for this version, which is View C, which is a raglan version of this top. And I'm actually really happy that I went for the raglan because I didn't have to worry about set-in sleeves, which is just amazing. Raglans are a lot easier to sew because you don't have to worry about any weirdness around the shoulder. You just sew the pieces together and jobs are good in. And I had this fabric cut out for quite a lot of time. I have the luxury of working in an environment where I can cut fabric or use a sewing machine on my lunch. There's a lot of sewing materials around me on a day-to-day basis, which is wonderful. But I was able to cut this out at work, and then I'd left it at work for ages, just not finishing it. And then over 2 half lunch breaks, So over 2 days, like half an hour each day, I completed this with pressing, with stitching, with everything, and then I wore it to work the day after I'd finished it, and I just love it. I think it's amazing. It's going to be a little bit difficult for me to show it to you because it is quite long, but it is finished. You can see the raglan sleeves in here. I've got this lovely neckband which I top stitched with just a zigzag. The lovely thing about working with knit fabrics like this, I'd say this is kind of a medium weight Ponte di Roma fabric, is that you don't have to worry about finishing your seams because jersey doesn't fray. And it's all finished. As you can see, it has a high-low hem. So the hem is shorter at the front than it is at the back, and I love it. I just love it. It makes me so happy. It's so comfortable, but it's also really breezy to wear. I wore this to work on a day when I think it reached the low 30s towards the early afternoon, which was really unbearably warm. But because this is so kind of loose fitting, so I can just show you how wide it is. I am not this wide, so when I wear it, it's kind of like a bit of a tent feel to it, but in a really flattering way. It actually looks really, really nice. It doesn't just look like you're wearing a big sack. And it was really breezy and comfortable and cool. I just wore it with some shop bought leggings. And the front hem kind of finishes, I would say, around about just below crotch height. And the back hem just goes and gently goes underneath your bum, so you can sit on it, and it's lovely. I want to make 100 of these. I want to make all 3 versions. The cropped version, obviously I've been saying that I'm very, very into the cropped kind of style at the moment. That really resonates with me, but also the dress I think is beautiful, and I just love it. It was a super, super quick, simple make, and I'm very, very happy with how it turns out. My one gripe with this project is nothing to do with the pattern, it's to do with the fabric, and that is because this is a printed jersey. Even though it's a really, really high quality printed jersey, insofar as the pattern doesn't kind of change when it stretches, it still stays that really high intensity colour, which is lovely. It doesn't go see-through. Because the back is a different colour, the high-low hem, you can kind of see the inside of the fabric when you wear it, because it's obviously, it falls longer at the back, and I do find that a little bit irritating, but that's just me nitpicking, because in general I think it's a beautiful project. It was such a joy to sew. And I really am just the biggest fan of closet case patterns. I really, really am. I love their patterns. I've made a couple of their patterns before. I have some more of their patterns in stash that I haven't yet used. But if you're looking for an indie pattern designer who is just very, very exciting and makes things that are fun to make but also incredibly easy to wear and just become real lovely staples in your wardrobe, I cannot recommend closet case patterns more highly. To finish off this sewing segment, and to be honest, the podcast in general, is actually a little acquisition to do with sewing and also to do with closet case patterns, because I picked up 2 more closet case patterns this week. I treated myself to these, and I suppose it's kind of a recommendation as well to end the podcast, which is nice. I, as you'll know if you've watched for a while, I'm a big fan of the audio podcast My Favourite Murder. I'm in the process of going back to the beginning and listening to all of the podcasts from the beginning again, because I'm completely up to date. I always listen every week. And this, I think, is the 2nd time that I've gone back to the beginning, so that just shows you how much I enjoy that particular podcast. I'm a little bit, it's borderline obsessive, I guess, but we all have our quirks, so there's nothing wrong with that. But in one of the more recent episodes, one of the hosts, Karen, talked about the fact that she has been watching the newest season of a show called Marcella on Netflix, and I realised that this was a crime programme that I had never watched, and I decided that it was about time that I did. The first season of Marcella is currently on UK Netflix. I believe it's on US Netflix as well, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But if you haven't watched it and you enjoy crime-based procedural dramas. I think you will very, very much enjoy it. It stars Anna Friel, who I love, and she really is a massive inspiration to me in terms of the outfits that she wears on that show. Her character is complex, to say the least, so I'm not saying that I want to emulate her as a person, but her sense of style for sure. And one thing that she wears a lot of are beautiful knitted sweaters. So if you enjoy sweaters, then definitely check out Marcella just for the sweaters alone. But she wears a lot of button-down shirts, which look beautiful on her. And she also wears, in the first season, this amazing anorak. It's a green kind of army style coloured anorak with a big fluffy hood. And so when I was browsing through Closet Case patterns and I found the Kalle shirt/shirt dress and the Kelly anorak pattern, I realised that I really, really, really needed these in my stash. I have no idea when these are going to get made. I am not pushing myself at all when it comes to being creative at the moment, because feeling that I can do something is such a change from how I've felt for the longest time. So in particular, the anorak, let's be honest, it's a pipe dream. It's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but the shirt/shirt dress is a definite maybe, because it's very, very simple in terms of its construction. They also have an additional pattern that you can buy on their website to change it to a long sleeved version if you would prefer. And I do think I can see a good few of these in my future. In particular, they have the little cropped version. They have a cropped version, a regular shirt version, and then a dress version, all included with this pattern, which is another reason I love Closet Case, because they always give you so many different variations for a similar thing. So who knows, we may well be seeing more of this kind of thing in my future. But like I said, I'm not making promises. I am not putting any stress on myself, because that would be very, very silly. But yes, very, very much recommend those patterns. I'm excited at just the idea of having those things in my wardrobe at some point. And also, if you are a bit of a crime junkie like myself, definitely check out Marcella if you haven't already. Well, we got through that, didn't we? I'm not gonna lie, I am pretty exhausted after all of that. I hope that it wasn't too gabbly, and I hope that you couldn't tell that I was getting very out of breath and tired towards the end too much, and that didn't interfere with your viewing pleasure too much. I hope you all have an amazing week. Thank you so much for waiting for me. It's been amazing to come back and check in with you and share my projects with you. I'm sure you can tell it's been a difficult time, and to feel like I'm coming out of that and that you guys were still here for me afterwards, it means everything. So thank you. I love you all so much. I hope you fill your coming weeks with crafty goodness of all kinds, but also just be kind to yourself. Take care of yourself. And I will see you all very soon for another podcast. And make sure to stay hydrated in the heat. I love you all, guys. Bye!